Hey, folks, this podcast is brought to you by King Arthur Capital Group. Fund your fight camp, showing fighters how to leverage credit and capital so they can treat their career like a business. Go check out the episode I did with David King Arthur McElroy. Follow them at King Arthur Capital Group on Instagram. Very excited to share that information with as many people in the combat sports world as possible. Financial situations always on people's mind when they're in the combat sports world. So if you're looking to get that a little bit more right, looking to treat your career a little bit more like a business, hit up King Arthur Capital Group and check out Fight Club Crate, mystery fight gear, knockout prices, undisputed value, combat sports boxes delivered monthly. Use my promo code TAPTHAT15 at Fight Club Crate for 15% off of your first purchase. And follow those folks on Instagram at Fight Club Crate. Very cool stuff, very unique boxes they put together for men, women, and kids. And finally, a winner of a gift idea for the combat connoisseur in your life. And what is up, everybody? This is Brady Grove bringing you another interlude episode of the Tap That MMA podcast. Follow me on Twitter at RotoBrady, on Instagram at RotoBrady MMA, and follow the podcast at Tap That MMA podcast on YouTube and Spotify. And with me this evening,
Ladies and gentlemen, the referee has called a stop to this fight at 21 seconds of round number one, declaring the winner by TKO, Will Davis.
you heard it there, folks. This guy is a 3-1 professional lightweight coming out of Louisville, Kentucky with Derby City MMA, coming off of another win just back on March 21st of this year. Give it up for Will, the famous Davis. Will, thank you so much for being here, man. Glad we could finally do this. How's it going?
It's going good, man. Just got out of practice. We had a good session today, man, and yeah, I'm getting ready.
Well, so like Derby City MMA, that's a place that we've seen a lot of people come out of and hit the higher levels of the regional circuit, hit the UFC. A lot of the time when people make it to the UFC or, to PFL, whatever it is out of Louisville, a lot of the time they're coming out of Derby City MMA. What is it like to train at a place that, has so many people of a high professional caliber in a state like Kentucky where you have your spots where people excel in MMA, but it's not necessarily like it's absolutely flush throughout the state.
So I came here in 2020, and I started with Derby City MMA. So over the years, man, it's an excellent gym. I mean, you get everything. You get BJJ, you get boxing, you get kickboxing. You get strength lifting, you get cardio, you get it all in one, and every day is something different. Every day when you train, you always growing. Like, you're never like stuck nowhere. You're never like, oh man, just same people, same stuff. No, it's same people, different stuff. And like everyone there is like grinding. Like, everyone is like mainly competitors. I mean, in either boxing, kickboxing, MMA, or even BJJ, or even weightlifting. So like everybody's just iron sharpening iron at Derby City MMA.
And so, like, as you're coming up in Louisville in MMA, Louisville, for folks that don't know, is geographically an interesting place where it's right there with Indiana. It's not
Yeah.
far from Cincinnati and Ohio, and it's not that far from some other states too, like West Virginia and everything else.
Yeah.
It's a geographical oddity, and you can kind of see that throughout your amateur career too. Taking fights in B2 Fight Series, HRMMA, Peak Fighting, Ohio Combat League. What is the process sort of for like as you're coming up, just trying to find fights, as they come and, with the different promotions that are all out there in that radius surrounding Louisville?
So like when I came here, I had my mind set up to be a fighter, and with my age and with my motivation and discipline, I just intend to make it. So like coming up in the amateur ranks, it's all about getting into fights, the good fights, the hard fights, and finding your game and evolving to the professional fighter you need to be when you go pro. So me traveling to different like states like Indiana, I've been to Alabama, Texas, even Ohio, going against high level amateurs in they brackets. It just gave me a round robin of skills to test out and go against. Like Texas, I went against the number 2 ranked amateur, in the state. I went to Ohio, went to say like the top D1 wrestler. So it's just like getting different skills. You just can't get it in Louisville. You can, but it's just like out seeking different promotions that will like allow you to fight as an amateur on it. It's just good publicity and good skills.
Because it's always when someone comes from a state or just a more, a city that's in an area that it's not necessarily known for like pumping out a ton of, fighters necessarily. The wonder about a lot of guys coming up is like, is this guy legit or has he just beaten everybody in the area that he occupies? And so,
Hmm.
being in Louisville and being able to test the waters in a bunch of different promotions in different states, you're able to get a better measurement of where you are as a fighter.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, I enjoy it, man. Like, to be honest, I never had a fight in Louisville, Kentucky. Like, this is my first fight coming up June 19th in the LFA in Louisville, Kentucky. So like the closest thing I got is Shelbyville or like Bowling Green. So the fact that I just started going to different like areas to fight, it made me who I am today. It made my record and speak for who I am as a fighter versus the fighter speaking for the record, if that makes sense.
No, for sure. And so, folks, what he was referring to just there is that Will Davis is going to be on the upcoming LFA card in Louisville, Kentucky. I actually attended the LFA card that was in Louisville like almost a year ago to that date.
Hmm.
And it's becoming a good thing. Like, for fighters that are more local to the Louisville scene, those are people that LFA is going to be reaching out to for those cards. And LFA, even though it's not on UFC Fight Pass anymore, and I don't have the data on how many eyes are getting on it with their deal with Vice now, LFA remains one of the premier regional prospect feeder promotions in the entire world. So that's a huge opportunity, and being able to finally do it in the city that you're currently in, that's got to be, exciting, and it lets you focus completely on the fight as opposed to all the other details.
Yes, yes, it is. Like actually, I've been wanting to fight on this card for almost 3 years now. They've been coming 3 years. Like when my coach Ben Fowler fought on it, to 2 years ago when my other coach Mike Roberts fought on it, to a year ago when our amateur Eden had fought on it, now she's making her pro debut as well. And I always miss the card. Either I have a fight scheduled before, after, or I just had a fight. And but that was this opportunity. It was just God telling me to take my time, and he blessed me with this opportunity to step in the ring and get that dub. So I'm very excited to put on a good show for Louisville.
And so your amateur career officially started back on November 6th, 2020.
Yeah.
And you had quite an active amateur combat sports career in total. You did some grappling, you did some kickboxing, a lot of different promotions, ups and downs. And so, first of all, what are your roots in combat sports, like athletically, and then like how did you end up getting into fighting? And then let's start with that, and then we can go from there. So, what are your roots in combat sports?
So back in high school I did wrestling, high school wrestling. But after that, I was looking for like a wrestling gym, so I found BJJ. So I started BJJ straight like 2018 back at home. I'm originally from East St. Louis, Illinois. So I had did BJJ in a gym called Lifestyle Academy, BJJ Lifestyle Academy in Belleville. Started my grappling career. Did a lot of grappling tournaments as a white belt. Loved grappling. And then from there, my coach was there was doing like striking, not really MMA promoting, like, but he do more striking. So I got into the feel of it and got into it, and I was like, man, I like this, And then I want to take it to the next level because I was a grappler, and then I was a competitor, and then I started striking, and I was like, I want to fight. So so at the time 2020 come around, I was seeking to fight. My coach was really not really about it, so I was seeking outwards. So my cousin was getting out the armed forces, and he was going to Kentucky, and I was like, you know why not? I'm coming to Kentucky with it. Why not? I'm got nothing to lose. So came out here and found Derby City and started. I came down here June 19th of 2020. I had my first amateur fight in November, I think 22nd of 2020, if I'm correct, or 21st.
It says November 6th, but it's
Yeah,
Tapology.
6th.
It could
Yeah,
definitely be
yeah,
wrong.
yeah. So then, there you go. So that had my first fight in November, and then I've been fighting ever since.
And I mean, like some parts of your background, I think would people would be able to put together from watching your fights. But like the interesting thing about watching your fights is that, when you get people down to the ground and you get in a favorable position, you have a very good instinct for, looking for a finish, but you do not waste time in doing damage when you're in a favorable position on the ground. You put people on the ground hard. Your ground and pound, starts as soon as you possibly can. You're throwing hard shots and elbows. That's where a lot of your finishes have come from. So that is one of the things that stood out to me the most when watching your fights is like, Jesus Christ, you do not want this guy to have side control on you.
Yes. One thing I gotta tell everybody is like it's all about MMA ground and pound. I love it 24/7. Like my last fight in Ohio, I hit the guy 300 and think 72 times. That's all from the ground, and it's just endurance, man. I love the groundwork. It's just an instinct, As soon as we get to the ground, it's game on. Like it's not BJJ. Like I'm not looking to try to submit you. I'm just looking to cause damage, and I'll wait for you to let me pass. It's not me forcing the pass because by me striking, you either going to move or take it, and usually they move. So then open position to a submission.
It's one of the most frustrating things about spectating MMA. A lot of the time is, and it's easy to say from watching stuff, but it's easy to say because it's easy to say and should be easy to do for a lot of people is when you're on top, you really do yourself a lot of favors by throwing shots when you're on top. This
Hmm.
is an era of the sport where, look, I don't know where the narrative changed, but as I recall watching MMA, a long time ago for this sport, which isn't that long, but still, is you could win an entire fight, you can win an entire round by getting a takedown in the last minute. That was
Yeah.
considered a way bigger trump card than it is now. Now, takedowns are scored a lot more neutrally in that you have to do something when you're there. People know
Hmm.
that. And there are still people that are really complacent with their willingness to try to do some damage from the top. They can have that top control for 5 minutes. And, especially in the amateur game, when you're in the cage for the least amount of time you will ever be as a fighter, even if it goes the distance, it can be frustrating to see people that haven't put that element together and they're leaving fights out there that they could have taken and they could have added to the win column.
Yes. Facts. I agree.
So, a lot of your amateur career was spent more or less at welterweight. Your last amateur fight was for the Ohio Combat League vacant amateur welterweight title. Not the result that you wanted in that one, but you turned pro just a handful of months after that. And since you've been a pro, it's been what appears to be a pretty calculated transition process from welterweight to lightweight, as you did some like catch weight at like 166, 160, 165. And it's this last fight against Joshua Grievous at OCL 43 back on March 21st. That was the first, as I can see, official lightweight fight. Was that a long time coming? Was that something that you knew you wanted to do when you were in your amateur days? Or was it something that as you got out of amateur and you were looking for fights and seeing the availability, you started to see like, you know what, I think I'm going to be more comfortable or I'm going to be a lot more competitive where I'm supposed to be at 155 pounds?
So I mean, so the big issue was like, man, I just like to eat. So like me coming into the MMA world and learning, like the biggest thing for me is learning how to fluctuate my weight. and learning how to like cut like versus me from when I was an amateur to now I'm better at cutting and better at like food nutrition, diet, and eating good. But the thing about me is I can make weight, but I just bulk back up to like 190. And I already so the thing about it was fighting at 170 because when I first started, I was like 230. So that got me down from 230 to 170 to fight at 170.
Jeez.
And it was yeah, oh yeah, I was a big kid all my life, you know. It was good, but then 170 got hard when the guys started getting like 6'3", 6'4", you know. So the transition was always there. It was just more of me catching up to make 55 mentally, you know.
And
So
I mean, it just makes such a big difference where it's like, obviously, just because someone's 6'3" doesn't mean that you can't finish them in the first round.
of
And
course,
But at the same time, at welterweight, there's guys that are supposed to be at welterweight. There's guys that can fight at middleweight if need be, and they're
yeah.
the appropriate size. So every weight class that you go to, there's people that are in that, one weight class radius on either side. So I mean, if someone's comfortable at 155, but they're making they're stopping at welterweight, that's someone that could be fighting at lightweight that's fighting someone who could be fighting at an 190-pound kind of like cruiserweight
Hmm.
if you were in Canada. So it could end up making a huge size differential that could wear on you over time, more than some might expect.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, it's just 170 is just like the like even like because then at one point my body just started to naturally get down to like 160. Like at my I think at the amateur 170 title fight, I weighed in at I think like 165, 166.
Yeah, like it says 167.5 as the
Yeah, so then like I weighed from that, then like for my opponent, you know, so it's like when we bulked back up, I only bulked back up to like 175 within that time frame from weighing to the fight. And then naturally it's just like my body's naturally just getting smaller. So naturally I was just being underweight kind of after the weigh-ins at 170. So the transition to 155 was just it just made more sense for me to keep going on once I go pro.
And as far as like the promotions that are available to pros in this geographical area, so you, it's a weird thing for the state of Kentucky because there isn't a promotion right now that has really set itself apart as like this is where every pro fighter in Kentucky wants to make it to. Like it's been kind of a mad scramble for a bit now. There used to be Premier, and that's not really a thing anymore. But HRMMA has had like some ups and downs. Ohio Combat League has halfway established itself as like where Kentucky fighters want to make it to. They do so many shows in Newport, Kentucky, where I live in Newport. Fortunately, I wasn't able to make it to your last fight at the pavilion, but that's a great venue
Mhm.
for watching fights. And I think like a B2 Fighting Series, they did one of the events that you're in Covington, Kentucky.
Yeah.
So some of those promotions are all over the place. B2, I know, does stuff in other states. But I think like Ohio Combat League has set itself up aside from or apart from a promotion like HRMMA. And no disrespect to HRMMA because they do, a good job, putting on
Great
consistent
job.
events. They do a good job at like hitting different areas in the state of Kentucky and finding venues for it. But the production quality of Ohio Combat League is really high. Like that's a promotion that you see a lot of people like like people headlining OCL events, those people have headlined LFA events. And, there's
Yes.
Melvin Gillard came almost straight out of prison and was in the main event of Ohio Combat League event. So, what has been your experience as a pro, both with HRMMA and with Ohio Combat League, and the things that you think that they're doing well, and the things that some of these promotions can improve on?
So, all shout out respect to HRMMA, man. I love them, bro. Like I started with them back in 2020, and I ended with them and made my pro debut with them, of course. So I started with them as an amateur, started them as a pro. With HRMMA, I feel like they are limited. because there's a lot of organizations also in like Kentucky too, or in the Louisville area. Besides HRMMA, like Future Fighters, and you got like a kickboxing companies too as well. So it's hard to network, and you gotta can't step on toes, I guess. But Ohio Combat League, they legit. Fighting with them, and I fought with them first as an amateur, and then I came back and fought for them for the amateur title, and then I fought for them recently as a pro. And I can say, from my experience, man, they good. They legit with the promotion itself, with the ring, with how everything is ran. My last like fight for them as a pro was like actually pretty good. Everything was legit. The money was pretty good. I like it. I like it. That's what a lot of high level fighters from like Kentucky and Ohio go now more than like because I feel like Ohio got more like connections and more like eyes on them versus other promotions that's just local to like Louisville, which is good, but not many eyes is on local Louisville scenes unless we got connections, of course. Like we can go seek out like other promotions and get on good like we can get on Cage Ferry, we can get on LFA, and all that, but it's just Ohio for mid level like level, they get really good. Like I get all respect to Ohio Combat League. Yes.
Yeah, and like it's kind of like when people are trying to figure out whether they want to fight at light heavyweight or heavyweight when it comes to Kentucky and Ohio, where Ohio certainly they've got a ton of gyms all throughout the state that are run by, UFC legends and everything. And there's a lot of promotions that, once you touch like Pennsylvania or you touch some of those more Midwestern states, you're talking about corn-fed wrestling dudes who are, very high level. Um, but it can be hard to stand out in Ohio. There's a lot of fighters in
Yeah.
Ohio. There's a lot of gyms, and the rankings just for pro fighters in Ohio is, stacked with people that you need to keep an eye on. In Kentucky, in West Virginia, I would say too, like in the same category is like you can stand out quicker if you are dominating the state. But it's more just like, people in their pro careers, they want to fight every few months if they can. And it can be really difficult to have the timing aligned and get the fights that you want to in the volume you want in Kentucky if you're not looking elsewhere.
Yeah, I agree. Like if you just stand to Kentucky solely and not fighting outwards, and yes, it's because eventually nobody want to fight you. Just because off the not off the record, just off the gym you come from, and what they just know about you already. So like with Ohio Combat League, you know, it's like it's more of a guaranteed like fight. Like guaranteed someone's gonna go. No one's gonna back out. Amateur or pro. Because I had a guy that got injured. His name was Ahmad, and then I had a 3 day, 4 day notice, and then it was some dude I forgot his name.
Sam McQuegan.
Yes, so like he took it on like a week notice. Like with Ohio, like they own it. But then like if it was to Kentucky, they probably wouldn't find a replacement because no one else would have tried to fill in. So that's the difference between like fighting different like promotions far as getting it done.
And I can't really speak on how this works with HRMMA, but like I do like Nogi Jiu Jitsu and Muay Thai and stuff at Carlson Gracie NKY in Newport. And a lot of people from there fight in Ohio Combat League. And the professionalism is like something you can't put a price on as someone trying to come up in the sport. When you know that if you're cutting weight, you're going to get that fight because some people, you hear too many horror stories in other places, and especially a few years ago, before some of these promoters had their shit together, when, guys who are 22 wouldn't be able to get a fight all year. And they had 5 lined up and just 5 fell through. They show up and they're like, hey, you're cool to fight up 3 weight classes, right? And it's like, no, that wasn't what we were talking about. So the professionalism in the sport and that like some of these regional promotions are able to uphold when that wasn't the case not that long ago is a big deal.
Yeah, yeah. I agree. It's just it's a lot of pros and cons with a lot of promotions. But like, it's just all respect to all the Louisville and promotions because they wouldn't I would without them I wouldn't even be who I am today. So and then they actually got me out, like my name known and going to like, through HRMMA I got to Ohio Combat League, through HRMMA I even got to Peak Fighters in Texas. So like it's just more ups and downs with the life of being an MMA fighter. I had fights that fell through 5 minutes before we walk out. So like it sucks, man, but that's the life. Yeah.
And the timing in this sport is so important, and the timing, like for you to be able to get that opportunity at LFA, is a big deal. Even having a win in LFA on your resume opens a lot of doors. Like
Yes.
that can be the difference in Ohio Combat League between being on the main card and headlining it. Depending on the evening, and so like to go back a little bit, February of this year, not that long ago. That was your first professional loss. It was so you had finished your first 2 pro fights, and then against Travis Hudson on February 7th, you get submitted in round 1. What did you learn from that fight against a guy like Travis Hudson, who from Kentucky has fought in a lot of the promotions that you have had a long amateur career, kind of, with trials and tribulations. So like, his record doesn't really reflect the challenge that he is.
Yeah, so in all honesty, man, like I it's like in a sense I need to run that back because it had nothing to do with him in general. It's more it happened with me, my personal life. My personal life got really in the way just in that camp, just in that time frame. A lot of bad things happened that made my mind like not focus on the fight, focus on just my life, and I took that in the cage. So like mentally, I wasn't there, but like I was on auto mode. This is just like I'm just fighting. Like yeah, I'm here to fight. Cool, whatever. So like in that case, all respect to Travis. It's a legit win. Like, don't get me wrong. Like a win is a win. I'm taking it on the chin, but me to say that I had a lot going on and I just wasn't mentally there towards the end, and then I learned that I don't need to take personal problems into the ring. So that's my lesson.
And always
So,
easier, always easier said than done, but at least like having an experience of it, like helps you better prepare for the next
yeah.
time. And then,
Because the will you seen against Travis and the will you seen before and after, that's the will that's that's legit. Yeah.
and speaking of which, back on March 21st, just so even, we're talking a little over a month ago at Ohio Combat League 43, you get a unanimous decision win over Joshua Vanilla Gorilla Grievous. And that one went the distance. That was the first time you had gone the distance as a professional. So it's got to feel good to, get something like that under your belt. And, what I know about Joshua Grievous is that he is more of an experienced fighter than his record in anything would indicate. That's a tough fight. And
Definitely.
I would
Agree.
call that the best win of your professional career so far. Yeah, especially considering like you had already beaten Devin Evans in kickboxing and then you submit him. So this last win was a really nice one to get. Talk about this most recent fight, how it went down, and what your takeaways are from your performance.
So all honesty, man, all shout out to Grievous, man, game opponent. I was going there with the mentality to win and to the mentality to never give up in that fight. I knew he's strong. I knew he's gonna try to use that power, use the skills, and I just gonna I was gonna do what I do best and just get it to the ground. So through the fight, man, it was a fun fight. I pushed myself to the limit of my grappling skills. My endurance was there. You know, I had a lot of grappling, a lot of holding on. My arms were tired, so I had to push through a lot of body soreness. You know, and through round two into round three, um, because the count, just was a lot on my arms this count. So my arms kind of got burnt out in round two, and I had to pick it up around three. But I mean, overall, man, it was a good fight. I loved it. I like it because we did go the distance, and then I mean, I watched the fight like probably like almost every day, and I like how I was just on it like a backpack. I was just on the skills. Like I was never giving them a chance to breathe, never them giving them a chance to reset. I'm always trying to move and keep the fight on the ground. Yeah, hands down was my best fight of my pro career yet. It just taught me to dig deep. It taught me that never give up, and it's just no matter what, play your game. Because in a fight, there's a lot of obstacles. That kind of occurred in the fight, and I kind of overcame it. And never kind of like bite into his taunts or nothing like that. I kind of stayed to my game plan, and the result is the result that I needed.
And so then, like a few days later, after that fight, Hunt Talent Management announced that they had signed you. So
Yes.
like, was that something that was like kind of in the works before the fight? Did they reach out afterward? And how big of a deal is it to you
Man.
to have somebody that's working, to further your career on that end when you can be focusing more on fighting?
Like it was crazy. Like he hit me up. Like I probably like I say, few days after the fight. He's like, "Hey man, he's like, man, I seen you. I seen your career coming up. I don't know if you got management or not, but I'd like to, manage you and get you to the next level." And I was just like, "Fuck." I mean, like, damn, man. At first I wasn't gonna bite. But then my research on the guy, see how fights he had. He had a guy right now. He got a guy that was in the PFC now fighting. He's fighting an ex UFC fighter out there in Pennsylvania. No, that's like at the Apex Theater, and I think Vegas coming up. And I inboxed a couple other fighters. Talked to them about him. It's a cool guy. They say he's legit. So then I was just like, why not? Um, and it was just dope. It was dope because like this last fight opened up a lot of doors, like you said. Just getting good fights at a decent level, just open up the doors and then open up that door to a good mentor company, and it's a good contract. It's legit, and like I said, since we got this manager, and now I'm fighting on LFA thanks to my manager. So, you know, kudos.
And now, last thing here before we go is, you've got that fight with LFA coming up in June. That's now even still just a couple of months away. I'm sure it'll be here before you know it, but you still got a couple of months. What do you think is going to be different about Will Davis from the most recent fight you've had to this next fight coming up?
Oh, in all honesty, I'm locked in. Like this is like the fight I need to like showcase the famous Will like at his full capacity. I'm going against a game opponent. He's undefeated out of Fort Wayne, Indiana. His name is Wilson. So he's a game opponent, man. He had four submissions, one TKO, and one decision fight. So he's a grappler. But the thing about it is, all his fights, he go against small 155ers. So me and him gonna be in the same boat as being a heavy 55ers. And I'm looking forward to getting to the ground with him. I'm looking forward to doing the grappling. I'm looking forward to striking. I'm looking forward to display the best I can be because, like, at the end of the day, he's stepping in the way for my opportunity to get to the top. And LFA is where I need to be to get to the top, and he's in my way. So I have to stop him any means necessary. So Wilson, if you're looking at this, watching this, bring the game, bro, because I'm gonna bring it. I hope you bring it, man.
Folks, this has been another interlude episode of the Tap That MMA podcast. Again, follow me on Twitter at RotoBrady, on Instagram at RotoBrady MMA. Follow the podcast at Tap That MMA podcast on YouTube and Spotify. Also available on Apple Podcasts and Amazon Music. Check out King Arthur Capital Group and Fight Club Crate. And check out Will the Famous Davis. On Instagram, follow him at I'm the Famous Will. You can find the links to get tickets for the LFA event. You can find what the situation is for sponsorship deals with Will Davis. And Will, thank you so much for being here tonight. I'm glad we finally got to do this. Third time's the
Yes,
charm.
sir.
And if there's anything else you want to say or anybody you want to shout out, the floor is yours.
Oh yeah, bad shout out to all my sponsors, Top Mountain Apparel, Jimmy John's, 4919 Brownsboro Road, Lions Den from Best Haircuts in the area, Louisville, and all my private sponsors as well, man. Just hey guys, we here, man. To my family at home in East St. Louis, we here. We want to make it June 19th. We're gonna put on the show.
Folks, thank you so much for listening. Have yourselves a great week. Keep an eye out for Will the Famous Davis and what he does for the rest of 2026 and an LFA in Louisville coming up in June. And peace.
So,